Hello, insiders. How are you? It is good to see you. I feel like it's been a while since we've sat down and done it like this, right? For those of you who joined us, I was in Queens live on Friday, and that was cool. But I am back in the white box today. And hopefully you can hear me. Mandy, just give me a thumbs up, just as a test, if you can hear me. All right, if somebody could just put in the chat that they can hear me, because I don't think Mandy can. Oh, yeah, there she goes. Great. Okay. Great. Thank you, Robin. Thanks, everybody. Sometimes, every once in a while, my Zoom has a tendency to let me hear me, but not let you hear me. All right, I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Mandy Edgecombe is with us today as co-host. Again, she is going to be monitoring the chat for me. So again, put the Q&A in there. Hello for everybody who is saying hi today. Hi from Staten Island, the financial district of Boston. Mark, we're going to be talking about Boston right in the beginning. And yeah, we've got crazy storms all over the East Coast today, here in New York as well. So, oh, hi, Beth. How you doing? Hi, Joe from London. Very good to see you. Woodside, Queens. Sylvia. Great, great, great. Great Neck, Pete from San Francisco. The New York Transit Museum talk on bridges. Okay, well, I'll be talking about 2 bridges on this talk, and you will be able to catch this later on. Gareth from Wales, welcome, welcome. Janet snuggled up in Brooklyn. Yeah, that's the way to be today. Okay, I'm just gonna get started. First of all, big thank you to Mandy for co-hosting. Also, big thank you to Robin, one of our insiders. You're going to see a lot of pictures from my tour. They are 93% Robins. So when I was putting this talk together, I realized that I didn't have a lot of historical visuals because the tour brought people to the actual Guastavino spaces and we could look at them. And then I went, oh crap, I don't have any pictures of the stuff that I talked about on the tour, but I knew Robin had gone on our one public tour on March 10th, which you can figure out that date was significant. So luckily, Robin squeaked in and gave me some great photos. So thank you, Robin. And let's just get started now. There he is. There's the man. There is Rafael Guastavino II. Now, there's going to be a couple of things I'm going to be reading quotes from him today from 2 really awesome, very hard to find books, but I will, again, after this talk, I will give you a reading list. I'll email it to you. But my favorite of all of the books is An Architect and His Son, The Immigrant Journey of Rafael Guastavino II and Rafael Guastavino III, written by Rafael Guastavino IV to Rafael Guastavino V. Did everybody catch that? So we have 5 generations of Guastavinos. Rafael Guastavino IV, who died in 2010, wrote this book to his son when he was graduating college, basically to let him know about his family's legacy. And the story about Guastavino II, who you see pictured here, and third, his son, is actually really quite incredible and endearing. First of all, the amount that these men accomplished in their lives, not only in New York, but in America, from 1883 until Guastavino dies in 1908, but Rafael Guastavino III keeps the company going into the 50s. And we can find Guastavino in hundreds upon hundreds of buildings. But this guy was born in 1842. Now, everybody calls him Catalan. They say he's a Catalan engineer, master builder, but he's actually was born in Valencia. So technically he's not Catalan, but most of his work was done in Barcelona. He moved in with an uncle when he left home because there was a little too many brothers and sisters. And he took up the trade of engineer and designer, and he got the title of master builder. He was also a violin player. It's actually, he always says his first love was violin. But in Spain, he starts building, he gets these contracts, he starts doing some bricklaying, and then he discovers something that he will always be forever changed by. And it's this spot in the Pyrenees. It's called the Cola de Caballo. And it literally means the horse of the tail. And when he saw this, he was invited up to an estate in the Pyrenees, and it stopped him dead in his tracks. And I'm actually going to read his quote. It's a little long, but it really influences everything he did after this architecturally. Where I saw a grotto of immense grandeur, one of the most sublime and extraordinary works of nature, which is what we're looking at here. I just left Barcelona after completing some buildings, among them the large factory of the Batillo brothers, and was under the impression that I had done something in these buildings inside of a cohesive system. But within this great specimen of nature's architecture, I realized just how small and insignificant my work had been. Like great chandeliers hanging from above, the floor of the lake receiving the whole way through an immense ventral opening like a rose window in the cathedral, covered by the full mass of the water of the rivers alone. Its builder, it passes over a vault. It is precipitated more than 200 feet, taking the form of its fault of the horse's tail, which is the source of the name Cola de Caballo, meaning that this whole lake was emptying down into this sort of almost beautiful natural vaulted area. And from there, he developed something he will forever call the cohesive system. And the cohesive system is the way that he uses tile and suspension to build his vaults and his domes and all of the things that he and his son will become famous for in the future. So I really like the natural nod. And he actually has a quote that in the future, all good architects will actually take their inspiration from nature because that is the most logical and economical. I'm not sure all architects did take that nod, but he was very forward thinking that way. And of course, what happens is, this is the Columbian Exposition in Chicago, but he submits work that actually gets noticed at the Philadelphia Centennial in 1876, and he realizes America is ready for his work while he is in Spain. As a matter of fact, a couple of things make Guastavino possible, one of which is steel. Bessemer steel now is being mass produced, so this is a very good, sturdy type of material to hold things up. Technology in terracotta tile production, and Portland cement has been refined so that it can hold these terracotta tiles together. So this was sort of a perfect trio to let Guastavino sort of take the Beaux-Arts scene by storm. And it's because of the Columbian Exposition that I'm going to talk about New York specifically today, because there's so much Guastavino all over we could talk about. Today is specifically New York. Beaux-Arts is taking the city by storm in the City Beautiful movement in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and Guastavino benefits from that, very much so. But I just said that. I'm going to show you a picture of Guastavino in Boston, but that's because this really displays very well his vaulted cohesive system, and that is him. These are very rare photos right there, looking on as they are building the vault in the Boston Public Library. And this was when he caught, this is right before he caught the attention of McKim, Mead and White. And McKim, Mead and White are those Beaux-Arts architects who designed the municipal building, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, and Pennsylvania Station, which of course we're going to talk about in a little bit. And they loved him. As a matter of fact, McKim, Mead and White were meticulous with their blueprints, but wherever they felt Guastavino could be, let loose, they just had big blank spaces that said Guastavino on them, and he let them do what he wanted to. And I'm going to show you that for the municipal building. And this is what the space under where Guastavino was standing looks like today. It is an event space at the Brooklyn Public Library. And you could just see how very simple, but how very elegant these vaulted arches are and how masterfully they are built. But the other thing about them were they were pretty economical and pretty quick to build as well. And one of the last things I'll talk about today is the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, in which was one of the most amazing architectural feats, period. But Guastavino comes to New York in 1883. Into 1884, he comes with his second wife, her two daughters, and his son, Raphael III. And they don't take to American life too easily. At first, he's a wine drinker and a cigar smoker, and guys in New York are whiskey drinkers, and they, chew tobacco, and is a little bit less civilized than what he's used to in Barcelona. But again, he realizes he can get a lot of work if he gets started right. This is the patent that he takes out for his fireproofing vaulted technology. Now, this was important. He was a very good businessman. He said that his work was fireproof because of the multi-layered terracotta. Now, in New York, he had to prove that before he could get this name. So they would hold samples of his vaulted roofs over these kilns that were, thousands of degrees of I think it was like 1 or 2,000 degrees that they created with heat. And it had to sit there for 10 hours and literally not fall apart so that he could be branded as a fireproofing company. And they did. That will actually be put to the test in 1997, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And there is another patent for his interlocking terracotta style. Now, he had many ways of doing the interlocking terracotta. He could do it on the diagonal, he could do it straight, he could do it herringbone, and it cost differently depending on what you wanted. Now, when I originally devised the in-person tour, and I think for those of you who have joined me before on other tours that I give, if I have taken a tour that I've done in real life, I like to actually follow the track of the tour. So the original private tour, I was hired by a Guastavino engineer. Actually, his mom hired me as a birthday gift. They flew up from the Carolinas because he was doing restoration work down in the Carolinas. And she hired me to do a private tour. And I went, okay, great. I'd love to do it. Of course, he's a Guastavino engineer. So what is he going to tell me? I appreciate Guastavino from the historical perspective and the stories that he has to tell. I'm bad with a ruler, so I'm not an architect. But I was able to actually right off the bat impress him, because the Customs House, the Alexander Hamilton's Customs House, which we know today as the Museum of the American Indian, has 2 hidden Guastavinos and one of their most gorgeous examples of their work, and it is the Rotunda Dome. And here is a picture of it. So Cass Gilbert, who designed the building, called for a gigantic oval dome with a very large skylight in it. And Guastavino Sr. was very nervous about this, but he said, I think we can do this. Basically, all we need to do are 2 suspension rings. And there's a large suspension ring at the bottom of the dome. And then they build the suspension ring to hold the skylight up there. And it was one of, for many years, the largest suspension skylights in the world. I think it's been surpassed. Absolutely gorgeous. But Rafael Guastavino's most defining characteristic is the tile. And the tile gets covered. It's double tile. But then they, as you see, put murals over it. But that's Guastavino tile under there. And so many people walk in there and they don't know it. And it's a really great example of what Guastavino could do behind the scenes to make this great utility sort of absolutely beautiful. And if you haven't been in there to see that mural, the mural was added much later in the 1930s. It's really impressive. And that rotunda is really quite spectacular. But my favorite, the staircases. The Guastavinos were also known for their staircases. And they have some gorgeous staircases all across the country. We're going to talk about 2. These, and then the ones at St. Paul's at Columbia. But this is designed very, very deliberately to look like something. Now you have to remember, that's dumb, sorry, to look like something themed to the building. You have to remember this was the Customs House when it opened, and the Customs House had to do with taking customs from overseas countries from boats. So everything about the Customs House is extremely nautical. Now, does anybody want to take a guess as to what this is designed to look like? You can put it in the chat. I'll give you a second. I see we've got a right answer from Mark Weber. A nautilus. It's supposed to look like a nautilus. So really quite ingenious, beautiful, and you know what? Playful. So we travel uptown. Now, if any of you have joined me for the subway tour, you know that this is a big stop on the subway tour. I also made it a big stop on this Guastavino tour because, again, here are Guastavino vaults that people either walk right by and not realize they're there, or, you know, just don't recognize. This is a picture of Robin's, and I believe the day that Robin went on the tour, these 2 were getting married. I always like to say that I've convinced 2 couples that I know of to have their wedding pictures at the municipal building from being on the tours, because it's a really great spot to do your pictures, especially if you're married at City Hall. But what was built was this, and this was a McKim, Mead and White building. And McKim, Mead and White were told when they were building the municipal building that they needed to build a very grand entrance into the Brooklyn Manhattan Transit Company subway station because it was going to be the premier BMT. It was actually a terminal at the time. And so what Guastavino did was he took a very irregular space. This is a very, very irregular shaped space, and he turned it into an absolute delight with this cathedral looking setting. And actually, it is this space that got me hooked on Guastavino. When I was teaching on the Lower East Side, I used to take the J train from Delancey Street right here to Chambers Street so I could go to J&R Music World. Remember those days? And I would buy CDs. Remember those days? J&R is no longer with us, unfortunately, but I would get out and I would come up here and I would go, holy crap, why does the JZ at Chambers Street, a train that nobody takes, get this gorgeous vaulted ceiling? And then I did my digging and I found out all about it, which we've talked about on the subway tour. This was meant to see a lot more people, and over the years it does not anymore. But just look at what he did with that space, with again the support arches, the vault, and also the irregular patterns in the arches themselves. It's really quite stunning. And he was told to do something very, very specific. He was told that at some point this station needed to frame the Brooklyn Bridge physically outside, because the BMT was calling this station up until the minute they opened it Brooklyn Bridge. They changed it to Chambers Street because they never offered access to the Brooklyn Bridge last minute. But again, these are all Robbins pictures, and they really do a very good job of showing the enormity of this space and just how special the space is. And also, it's very plain. It's white. It's straight tile. It's not the most intricate tile system that Guastavino designed, but it really gets the job done. And I believe, oh no, that's a good one. And again, the way that sort of you've got these independent vaults and then sort of the corridors that are vaulted on the side, it really quite amazing. And they almost look like sound waves. That's what I like to say. And there is this, here it is, the arch that frames the Brooklyn Bridge, which was completely intentional. And it is my belief that it is why the space is so irregularly shaped. And I'm going to show you the blueprint. Here is McKim, Mead & White's blueprint for the area. Now you could only imagine handing this over to Guastavino and thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. It's not a dome. It's not just a straight set of vaults. They've got to turn, they're irregular, they're not symmetrical. And again, all to get that view of the Brooklyn Bridge. And there it is. Basically, McKim, Mead & White would throw this down, and then Guastavino would fill it in, as they started doing here. Again, for those of you who joined the subway, slight repeat information, but some new information. Here are the municipal building tracks where my cursor is. So we all know, a lot of us, and if you do not, you're going to get a great tip today, that if you come in on the 6 train and it parks itself here at Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, it's going to turn itself around in this loop. Now, right here is the famed City Hall station. And because of the shape of City Hall Station, the architects, Hines and Lafarge, that were brought in by the IRT, or the Interborough Rapid Transit, didn't know what to do with it. And so Hines and Lafarge were very used to Guastavino up at St. John the Divine. So they call the Guastavino family in. Now, at this point, this is mainly seniors design, and Rafael Guastavino III is looking on. And making sure that all the work is going well. So they come in and they design 14 support arches on this very tight turn here. And of course, this is the result. And it is probably one of the most famed spots in New York for New Yorkers, because New Yorkers can't get in and New Yorkers don't like that. So they tried to find ways to get in. And of course, the quickest way to get in is to take that 6 train. Which we do on this tour and the subway tour as well, or you could join the Transit Museum and try to get in. They take people in a couple times a year. But you could see, again, these 14 support arches were very important to the shape and to the look of this station. And of course, the green and beige just made it all the more inviting. And they had to create these sunken vaults for light to come through those leaded glass windows. Now, this was a great picture. I was like so thrilled when I found it in the Transit Museum years ago. That is Junior looking on as they are building the 14 support arches. This is early days. So you could see this is basically on the ceiling of the station where the wood is above him. They're going to end up filling in, but they also have to create those vaults for the bunkers for the windows, which I'm going to show you in a second. This is a little later on in the work. So I want you to notice here the piles of tile on top of the support arches. Look at the way that these piles of tile fan out, because I'm going to show you a picture in modern context in a second. So these are my pictures when I got to go into City Hall with the Transit Museum. Now, do you see through the broken windows? You see this right here? That is exactly what the Guastavinos were working on here. So this area translates into this area for the support arches and then the vault above it. And of course, the windows are in very bad repair, but the vaults, the block, glass block bunkers, sorry, I lost that word, are still protecting it from the elements, kind of. They are a little leaky. There's a lot of leakage going on in City Hall. And here's a close-up. Again, you can see it. Layers upon layers upon layers of terracotta tile. And we'll talk about that actually in 1 second. I also apologize for the quality of these photos. It was cloudy that day, and I'm bad at taking pictures anyway. And actually, it does make a little bit of a difference. I'm sure somebody's going, cloudy, you're underground, but it does, in the sun, it looks a little better. But of course, here's from the mezzanine level going down to the platform, and just Guastavino got to show off everywhere here. Now, this was a very typical cross-section of how Guastavino did his work. There would be unfinished tiles, 4 layers of them, and then they would be attached with plaster of Paris to each other, and then the layers would be fixed with Portland cement mortar, as you could see here, almost like a layer cake. So there's something, you know, very much like baking, literally involved in Guastavino construction. And here's a really great decorative example of it in City Hall. And I'm really glad that I had the foresight to take this picture when I did, because I didn't know I'd be doing this tour years ago when I went in there, but it really demonstrates it really well. Now, this is a more finished look at it because they knew people would be looking at it. And you can see that glaze on the tile. I'm going to show you an unfinished piece when we get to Grand Central that was never supposed to be seen. Before we go, I worked with Aaron Assis a couple of years ago because the Guastavinos built 14 support arches, and because I'm a big old cheeseball, I decided to write a sonnet about City Hall that we actually put up at the Transit Museum for one of their platform designs. So basically, each of the arches gets a line. It does have a rhyme scheme that is supposed to be almost Shakespearean until you get to the end. You'll see that the rhyme scheme here actually links back to the beginning, because the first line and the last line are a clue about how to see City Hall. This is the last stop on the Downtown 6. It goes through City Hall and comes back out to Brooklyn Bridge City Hall. This is the first stop on the Uptown 6. I'm not going to read it, but I can send it to you if you want me to. And then actually, in a brilliant move, Aaron got the MTA guys to actually print it out in MTA font. So literally the MTA printed out like MTA signage, and we put it on the staircase of the Transit Museum, Court Street. And Aaron did a string installation on top of it, which leads up to the City Hall exhibition at the Transit Museum. And of course, all of this was inspired by Guastavino and his 14 support arches. So we would, on the tour, we would take the train uptown to 33rd Street. And at 33rd Street was the work of this man, or the result of this man's financing, Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt, known as Freddie. And he, like all of the Vanderbilts at the time, Cornelius is gone. Cornelius's progeny are now running the terminal project, obviously Grand Central Terminal, and they bring on Warrens and Wetmore. And Alfred wants to, oh, we just lost Mandy, I got a text. She lost electricity. So in case I lose electricity, I apologize in advance, but I think we're okay because of the storm. Alfred wanted to build a hotel that would be part of Terminal City, but to the south. And so he builds the Hotel Vanderbilt, and who does he use as his architects but Warrens and Wetmore? So while Warrens and Wetmore are completing Grand Central Terminal, they're also building the Hotel Vanderbilt on 33rd Street for Freddie. Freddie also built himself a very handsome 2-floor penthouse up here. But what's really great about Guastavino is on ground level, they built this great ballroom called the Della Robbia Room. And you can see, I know this picture isn't great, it's black and white, but what you're seeing here is sort of a 2-level open ballroom and restaurant space for the Hotel Vanderbilt. And I want you to look at the tile. Now, this is not a color picture, but this is one of the greatest examples of Guastavino decorative tile. Now, this was about 1912-ish. So Raphael Sr. has passed away. He passes away in 1908 in North Carolina, where he ends up settling, which we'll talk about in a second. And they have, in the meantime, about 13 years prior, they build themselves their own tile factory in Woburn, Massachusetts. And this enables them to produce hundreds of thousands of terracotta tile a year, but it also gives them the creativity to make that tile decorative. Now, wait, if you've never seen this, it's some of the most stunning decorative work Guastavino ever did. Sorry, tee it up. This is the outside of the Hotel Vanderbilt at the moment. Again, this is a Robin shot. Actually, all of these are Robin shots coming up. This is the Della Robbia room now is a Wolfgang Steakhouse. So what you'll see is they cut the room in half, built a floor, and the steakhouse is basically right under the ceiling of the old Della Robbia room. And you can see just how beautiful this tile is. Deep blues, floral accents, little beaded floral pieces on the side, and every single tile is decorative relief in some way, with the exception of the blue trim. But even the deep blue trim makes this really gorgeous. And of course, my favorite was bringing this tour full of architects in, and these guys are sitting at the bar going, but look at who is hanging right by the cash register. There he is, Raphael Guastavino himself, hanging out, looking at his tiles. And this is a really, Robin, thank you for this picture. You could just see how detailed this tile work was, individually, tile by tile, placed by hand in there. And another good shot here. I considered this to be one of the coups of the tour because Wolfgang's doesn't like people just walking in, standing there. But because I brought people in at 3 p.m. on a weekday, and I sort of made nice with the hostess at the time, she's like, sure, bring your people in. And if we just came into pictures and laughed. That's also a great shot of how you can see just how intricate that works. Just absolutely gorgeous. Now, so then I'm a taskmaster on a tour. If you've never been on one of my tours, you know there's usually a lot of walking involved. I make everybody walk up Park Avenue to Grand Central Terminal, because Grand Central Terminal is full of Guastavino, even in spaces you don't think it is. Obviously, everybody knows what's coming up, the Whisper Gallery and the Oyster Bar, but there's Guastavino everywhere. And this, again, is considered the 42nd Street entrance, considered to be the main entrance to Grand Central Terminal. There's Guastavino under this awning here. And there it is. So Guastavino, just again, this is more utility. It's not decorative, but it's there. You'll miss it if you don't look up. You never know it's there. You're usually darting in or darting out of these doors. Then you walk down Vanderbilt Street. This is all closed off now because of that Vanderbilt Tower that they're building, but you go into the old carriageway where the taxis and the passenger drop-off was. This is closed off to vehicular traffic since the early 2000s. And again, you've got this utilitarian, but still very nice looking Guastavino ceiling. Now everybody, MTA guys smoke there, so it's usually quite smoky. And there is that's a great photo, Robin. So you can see, again, the herringbone crisscross. But when I took the tour through, I said, we're not going in. Everybody thinks, all right, we're going to go in. We're going to go to Grand Central. We're going to go downstairs. Just get us there, Justin. We know where we're going. No, there's a really great hidden Guastavino, not in Grand Central, but you can get to Grand Central through the old Biltmore Hotel. So the Biltmore Hotel was built, Warrens and Wetmore again, as a sister building to Grand Central, connected to Grand Central, and Guastavino, because it's Warrens and Wetmore, had their way with certain spaces in the Biltmore. The Biltmore today is an office building. It's in the middle of renovations, but the structure is still there, but they stripped down the Beaux-Arts facade and put up some glass in 1985. This used to be the main palm room, they called it. And this clock right here, oop, my power just browned out. So hopefully you guys are still there. I think you probably are. Actually, somebody just give me a chat to say that I'm here still. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, continuing, never a dull moment. This is a remnant of Guastavino, a Guastavino driveway down into the parking garage under the Biltmore, which is mainly used by MTA employees today for Grand Central Terminal. And you'll see here, completely hidden. As a matter of fact, again, Aaron was walking by one day, took a picture of it, this picture, and said, hey, isn't this Guastavino? It is. And then, of course, I'm taking this group of 15 down into this parking garage. And it's a really great, again, really great example of Guastavino work hidden in plain sight. The garage attendant always kind of looks at me weird. I'm in there all the time going back and forth because when their cars are not parked on it, there's also old tiled taxiway signage there. That day they were parked on it, unfortunately. But here's a little bird's eye view of us walking down this Guastavino into the garage, because in the corridor that's a back hallway from the garage to Grand Central Terminal, which feels like, you know, you're breaking the law when you walk in here. This is the unfinished Guastavino tile where we really get to see what the process was for the Guastavinos. Now this hallway opens again from behind the station master's office to this garage area. And if you don't look up, basically you're gonna miss it. And when you do look up, all you're looking at is a bunch of utilities. But under those utilities, look right here. Here is unfinished. It wasn't even glazed Guastavino. And again, you can see the layers upon layers, that 4-layer system that Guastavino patented. And you could just look at it right there. And it was great. This was, I screeched like a little girl at being 5 years old. And I don't even know. This was just great when I found it a couple of years ago. And I said, I have to do a Guastavino tour so I could throw this on there. And there again, Robin, thank you for having the foresight to do a close-up of this. Because without your pictures, I wouldn't be able to geek out about it today on this talk. And there you can see again that combination of Portland cement mortar and plaster of Paris and tiles and tiles and tiles. Oh, and I threw the diagram in again for you just to see. Go back. There you go. Guastavino at work. And then, of course, where do we take our bathroom break? We take our bathroom break here. I say to everybody on the tour, if you got to go to the bathroom, we'll just wait right here. There I am making sure my pictures are in order. While everybody's walking around and taking pictures, of course, this is the famed Whisper Gallery. Completely unintentional effect of these vaults were the fact that they, especially when they're this low to the ground, act as like a really cool game of telephone where, and we have a really good example, this guy is talking to this girl. And again, they talk into that corner arch, the voice travels over the vault and it sounds like the person is standing right behind you. Now, if you came to the Grand Central virtual tour, I did a little YouTube video snippet of a guy demonstrating it very well. I did not put it in this tour just because I figured I wanted to keep things moving, but if you would like to see it, I'll throw it into the reading list email as well, just to see how it works. But if you get it right, it really is quite a neat effect, sometimes kind of eerie because it sounds like there's somebody right behind you. It's also, you have to give it a minute to get it right. And of course, as I always like to say, what is the most popular thing that happens here? Wedding proposals all of the time. But what this was designed for was actually the entrance to the Oyster Bar, which is the oldest tenant in Grand Central Terminal, opened in 1913 with the terminal. And of course, when everybody bellyaches about not being able to get into City Hall, I always like to tell people, go have a drink or have some oysters at Oyster Bar. It's almost the same layout. Not the 14 support arches, but the same continuous vaulted ceilings. very low to the ground. And of course, what Oyster Bar has done as they've renovated, because Oyster Bar, by the way, is where the fireproofing got tested in 1997. Oyster Bar had a devastating fire. A motor in a refrigerator in the kitchen caught flame, and the whole place went up. The furniture melted, the wood burned, but after about 2.5 hours of burning, they found that the structure was absolutely sound, and only pieces of the external layer of tile had fallen off, but the 3 other layers under it were pretty much okay. So a lot of this tile we're looking at was new tile put in the late 90s after that fire. And here we are again. Now, one of the great stories that goes on about the Oyster Bar is, again, because of the same sonic quality like outside in the Whisper Gallery. It was said that police officers in the 1930s during Prohibition would like to be sat kitty corner to infamous bootleggers so that they could hear through the corners where the bootleggers were delivering their alcohol and making their alcohol. It's a legend. Not sure how true it is, but it's out there in the lore. And it makes sense, because if you go and sit in the Oyster Bar when it's crowded, it's a cacophony of noise. And the Guastavinos were actually quite embarrassed about this. So much so that right after the Oyster Bar opened, Raphael Jr. Took out a patent for sound absorbing tile, which then they used for a concert hall down south. But we'll get to that patent in a second. Here is an old photo or a historic photo of the Oyster Bar. So you can see a little bit more elegant in the day when it opened. My favorite thing about the Oyster Bar is the secret entrance in the back. But here is the patent for the sound absorbing tile that Guastavino Jr. put out 1916. So 3 years after Grand Central opened, they really wanted to try to figure out how to make this sound more palatable for people who were using the spaces. Even though we get a kick out of it today, it couldn't get annoying a little bit. How can I not? My baby. So Penn, the original Penn, this will be a quick stop. Guastavino was also used by McKim, Mead and White here at Pennsylvania Station. In the early 1910, it opens, and Guastavino actually was able to flex some of his modern muscles here and prove once again that he was really good at suspending vaults that had very little support. So as you could see here, this is a picture of the concourse mid-build. And here are the Guastavino vaults just sitting there on these exposed steel supports, and they'll never be filled in. That's the way they're going to look. And again, they use that idea of the suspension ring to hold those skylights up. Here's a picture of it finished. And this is not a typical Guastavino. Guastavino sort of builds all this stuff in around more cement and more solid building, but this literally, they're almost like sails that are deployed in the sky and just held up by those elegant exposed steel beams. Really, really beautiful stuff. And I don't know why, I just like this picture. Robin knows I hate to be like photographed with my face. So she'll be like, hold that up and just take a picture. I was talking about this on Park Avenue. We did not go to Penn on the tour. It's nowhere near there. And there's not much to see except, I'll tell you in 1 second. And again, here are those vaults right here and over here, over the entrances to the concourse. And again, Guastavino and McKim, Mead and White just knew how to work well with each other. And Penn was a really beautiful example of that, which we lost, obviously, to demolition in the mid-1960s. And we lose those ceilings. And of course, everybody thinks we lose Guastavino, period, end of story, in Penn Station. We've got great Guastavino in Grand Central Terminal, but nothing left in Penn. Well, not true. So these were access tunnels that would connect the lower levels, what is now the LIRR, to the IRT trains, the southbound 1 train. And these would give you access, easier access, also from 7th Avenue to the 1 train and then to the LIRR. And this passageway was dark for many years. It was shut off in the late 80s, I believe early 90s. probably when LIRR was beginning to do all of their renovation work downstairs, the MTA, sorry, on the LIRR. And what you lose is, I call them, these are like Penn's little whisper galleries. And so recently, a couple of months ago in the fall, the lights went on. I was told by Amtrak the reason that the lights went on was because Amtrak is looking in again to the viability of using these spaces to easily connect 7th Avenue to the 1 train, to the LIRR, in anticipation for Moynihan and the new 7th Avenue 33rd Street entrance that the MTA is putting in. But the treat is, inside there are those Guastavino vaults, and there are a couple of them. And this was a big hit, by the way. You know, they turned the lights on, and all the news, all of the news outlets went crazy over them. And I was like, guys, they're right there. You can just take a look at them. So Penn is a side note. Then on the tour itself, we get on the 4 or 5 or the 6, whichever comes first, to go up to another really stunning, massive example of Guastavino's work in New York, which is the Queensboro Bridge. And the Queensboro Bridge was an initiative of the Bridge Commission, which was started by Gustav Leventhal in 1903. So basically what happened was after the Brooklyn Bridge, after the Manhattan Bridge, they realized we need more East River crossings and Queens needs a bridge. So they get together a commission that was responsible for building the Williamsburg Bridge and also this bridge right here. Lefford Buck comes in and designs it with Henry Hornbostel. And they both use Guastavino. As a matter of fact, there are off-limit Guastavinos on the Williamsburg Bridge as well in the restrooms that have been shut. Guastavino was employed very well there too. And so actually this is from Queens looking over. It was designed after the Pont Marbeau, which I did not know. In Paris, this is how Henry Hornbostel sort of envisioned on a giant scale this cantilever bridge, suspension bridge. And there it is right after it's finished. And you can see all of these portals right here. They're all Guastavino under there. Guastavino was brought in to create a gorgeous open marketplace, which was called Bridge Market. But while he was at it, he also created one of his only, if not his only, but I'm not sure about that before I say anything, a vehicular tunnel right here. So if you ever want to drive through a Guastavino, here's a great chance to do it right over First Avenue in 59th Street. You'll see here these large, massively large, gorgeous Guastavino vaults creating this vehicular tunnel. And there it is again. Now, this is my picture. For whatever reason, the day I went down there, I decided to feel a little artful, even though, again, I'm not a great photographer, as I've told Beth, who's on this tour today. And then here's the Bridge Market. Now, for those of you who've been to the Upper East Side, have been to the 59th Street Bridge, you know it's no longer open air any longer, but it was for many years. It was designed to be a market for the people, obviously, for the working class to sell their wares, to buy foodstuffs, whatever, whoever was there. It does eventually get closed down and closed in. But I mean, look at this space, absolutely gorgeous. And Henry Hornbostel and Gustav Leventhal called it the cathedral, a purpose, because they knew they were getting in Guastavino and they knew it was going to look absolutely European in style and stunning. And what a really great place to be able to go pick up some produce or some meat, which was being sold there, food, flowers, all this great stuff. What happens is it gets closed in, and it is now this space where there used to be a food emporium, which was a very big deal when the food emporium came in, because it was like, what are we going to do with the space for many years? The food emporium moves in, food emporium goes out of business. Food emporium then abandoned the space. I was told it was supposed to become a Trader Joe's. I don't know if that was official or not. Somebody who knows better from the area or who knows may be able to verify that. I'm not sure if there's been any movement on that. I haven't been up there since March, since this tour, since this picture was taken by Robin. But when you could go into Food Emporium, imagine food shopping here. And then next door, what was a restaurant space for many years open to the public called Guastavino's has now become an event space. Now, when it was a restaurant, Guastavino's did not chop up the space like this. I don't love what they did here. As you can see, it's very busy. There's a second floor mezzanine that was built in to, for cocktail hour space or more entertaining space or presentations. But it really kind of cuts up the room and the view of the vaults. And you can see around all of the supports, they've put lighting, they put projectors. So it kind of crowds it up. But and as this is again a Robin photo, so I liked that she highlighted the fact that you've got all of this tech sort of hanging off Guastavino, but it does make it look versatile, obviously. When you're upstairs, it's really much better. With the windows and with the vaults, you can see just how impressive this space is. Oh, I took this photo. Because they let me every once in a while. I become friends with all these security guards at these places because, one of the things that bothers me the most was Guastavino built all of these spaces that were intended to be for public consumption, and he loved that. He also obviously built more, which is a private Vanderbilt home, but he loved his temples to the masses, basically. And when they get shut down for things like event spaces or there's no public access anymore, I kind of get a little bit annoyed because people should be able to appreciate this. So I usually give that spiel to some security guards at the doors of these places, like at the Cunard building as well. And they go, all right, I'll let you in, go ahead. And then sometimes they let me bring tours. And this day, they were nice enough to let us go. Now, other examples, I'm not going to go into too much detail because again, this is a Guastavino, New York presentation. Obviously, the main registry room at Ellis Island is one of the first examples people think of after the Whisper Gallery and the Oyster Bar when they think of Guastavino in New York. Interestingly enough, the building was built in 1900, but the Guastavinos don't get in there until I believe 18 years later. So their ceilings, and again, Mandy, you can fact check me on that because I know you are an Ellis expert, but I believe that was the case. And if you have anything to add, you can. Of course, the Elephant Room at the Bronx Zoo. Guastavino had lots of experience with zoos. This is a Hines and Lafarge building. So wherever Hines and Lafarge went, wherever McKim, Mean and White went, wherever Warrens and Wetmore went, chances are Guastavino went with them, Guastavino and Sons. So, and of course, here's St. Paul's. So St. Paul's Chapel at Columbia, which I believe recently reopened after some renovations. This is more Byzantine, as you can see, less utility. What we had been looking at for Guastavino on most of this presentation was at the time supposed to be, yes, Catalan and European, but a little bit more modern. This is definitely a Byzantine accent here. And there's that staircase. So again, the Guastavinos just really did stairs very, very well. Now, the story of the Guastavinos continues, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap up the presentation with Raphael Guastavino the third taking the business over, and really the job that proved that he was as good, if not better than his father, was St. John the Divine. And we'll end the wrap up there. And then eventually what I would like to do is do a sort of later Guastavino, because that's the Guastavino a lot of people don't know about. You've got Buffalo Central, which was all Guastavino up in the Buffalo train station. And then there's a lot of time that Raphael Guastavino the second gives to the Carolinas, because he goes and retires down there and then eventually dies down there. And I know Lorraine is on this talk, and Lorraine, I believe, works at Biltmore, which was one of his famous works he built for the Vanderbilts. And Lorraine has some really great photos, and she and I will partner up to do a Guastavino in the Carolinas and later Guastavino stuff, probably at some point in September. But this is an older picture of Raphael Guastavino III, as he has taken over the Guastavino Company and Empire. He builds himself quite a lovely home out in Bayshore, Long Island, which is still there, I believe. But this is how he proves himself. He sets his name above his father's because he's living in his father's shadow, but they work well together. There are a bunch of really cute stories, one of which I'm going to leave you with, between father and son, and how they used to get on each other's nerves, but they always really trusted one another, which was really great. St. John the Divine, this is an original rendering of St. John the Divine, Hines and Lafarge put together from the 1890s. And you'll notice a lot of things different about St. John the Divine we have today. One of which is A, it's not finished, and B, that spire in the center was never built. As we all possibly know, St. John the Divine, because of a lot of setbacks financially and because of disagreements on designs and because it starts, Byzantine Gothic, but then they started wanting to do something else with the back. Romanesque Gothic. They wanted to do Byzantine in the back. They couldn't figure out how to finish the damn thing. Still not finished, but they needed to get the choir and the chapels in the back built. And they were running out of money. So Guastavino Jr. comes in and he says, here, what I can do is instead of building the spire, which is going to take forever, let me build you a temporary dome. And he sells them on it because this dome cost $10,000 to build. And even at that time, that is a very cheap amount of money for the scale of this project. And because of the size of the dome, it is the third largest dome, masonry dome in the world. And it was built in 15 weeks. Absolutely incredible that it came in massively under budget and really early done. So what he does is, they build between the support arches and then they cap the dome. And they had guys working over and over and over to finish this. And they did it again in 15 weeks, $10,000, and it held. So much so that it's still there today. They never went back and finished it. That dome is part of St. John the Divine. And it is really quite an impressive site and an impressive piece of architecture. Obviously, very, very plain. But the fact that it exists, the fact that it's still there, the fact that it was intended to be temporary and is there 100 years later is absolutely incredible. It was built in 1909, by the way. As a matter of fact, the dome was finished so quickly that the back choir area wasn't even done. There was daylight. You could see it right here. That wasn't even started yet. That dome's almost done. It just stood there. They needed to build support walls to hold it up because it wasn't anywhere near ready, but the dome was. And that's a really good picture of the dome. It's very hard to get a picture of that dome. But one of the things I'm going to leave you with, because that is the end, I'll leave it on the dome, is my favorite thing about the Guastavinos was their relationship. So what I didn't tell you in the beginning was when they get to New York, father and son are abandoned by Rafael Guastavino's wife. She hates America. She takes her daughters. They go back to Barcelona. And he's this 9-year-old kid, Rafael the third, and Rafael the second single dadding it while trying to start his business and make his impact in building and architecture. And there was a massive financial panic in 1884 in New York that all of the contracts that he started with were suspended. So they were poor, they were living in the office. And there's this really great story about how at night, to sort of soothe Guastavino the third, because he was, lonely and scared, they were living in their office, Rafael would play the violin every night as they were hunkered down in blankets on the floor. And my favorite story, this is such a typical parent story. Rafael was really proud. He got chosen he won a contest for a church up in Boston. And Rafael Sr. was down in North Carolina. And at that time, phone technology was very, very new. And they had a phone in the office. And it required both of the Guastavinos to be in their separate offices to use the phone. And Guastavino's son just wanted to boast about it. And so Rafael Guastavino IV records what the telephone conversation was. And he was very scared to call his father, but he said, "This is Rafael in Boston," said his son unnecessarily. And the elder's voice said, "What's the matter?" "Nothing," Rafael Jr. hastened to answer. "We took out some centering at the bank job yesterday. They were building a bank in Boston that actually they were very concerned about because of the supports. But it's all right." I know, answered Rafael. He never had any reason to worry. This is what Rafael's saying to him. "But why did you telephone from Boston to tell me that?" And he said, "Well, there's something else I wanted to tell you. Do you remember the sketches of the church you saw me working on when you got back from North Carolina last spring? Well, I won the competition." And so Rafael goes, "Oh, good. So you got us a new job, a church, you say. How big is it?" And he goes, "No, it's not a new job. It was for a contest, the Architectural League contest. I won the gold medal." "Oh," answered his father, "I see. A gold medal, you say? Well, that's good. That's good. Is there anything else you want me to say? And he just says, no. Well, then I'll say goodbye then. A call is very expensive. And he hangs up the phone on him. And then, of course, what happens is the sweetest thing. Raphael ends up turning around and saying to somebody, this is senior, prominent architects are good salesmen. That's all. The draftsmen they employ are really the best architects. I did well when I taught Raphael because Raphael was doing all the drafts for his son. And they are really most beyond the architecture that we see and enjoy. They are just the most nicest father and son team that feels so real to us. And so I will leave it at that for this portion of the tour because I know I'm almost at 1 o'clock. I'm going to stop my share. And we even had story hour at the end there. All right, Mandy. All right, Mandy, did you make it back? Oh, Mandy, you might not be able to unmute yourself. Hold on 1 second. There you are. Okay. Are you there? Mandy.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. So I don't know. I didn't see a lot of questions because my power went out. So I had to tether from my iPhone and get back on. I don't, let me start going through. I'm from 1233. I had asked everyone if there was any questions after I got back on, but I don't think there was direct ones, but if there are, please send them right now. I did ask a trivia question about why Guastavino did the tile ceiling in Ellis in 1918 and not originally. And I think someone answered it.
I was right about that though, right? It was 18 years? It was 1918?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
And where we are, goodness gracious, there was a lot of stuff. I feel like someone said it, but I'm not too sure. And if you did, please say something again. So the reason that the tile ceiling was redone was because the roof of Ellis Island was completely destroyed after the explosion at Black Tom in 1918, July 30th. So we're at an anniversary of that, but that was an explosion of a barge full of munitions that was being sold to our allies, to the British and the French during the Great War. And Germany didn't want that. So the German spy ring, ran by Franz von Rintelen, blew it up. And so there's actually a lot of architectural damage in the hospitals of Ellis Island, like where the actual door jambs were blown out. And then I've recently been coming across some pictures in Manhattan where they had police and security guards standing in front of shops whose windows were blown out. So basically, for 1916, this happened in 1916, I'm sorry. So basically from then on, after that blast, any building window in the trajectory, even including Manhattan, was blown out too. And it's a story that we don't hear about very often.
No, we do not. That's awesome.
So one of the things that they say at Ellis too about the tiles is the entire time that it was abandoned, only 17 of those tiles fell off that ceiling for, the decades and decades that it was abandoned. So that tells you how good the work was.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Cool. So I picked up, I see where you cut out, Mandy.
1233.
So okay, David Koenig. Yes. So I kept saying Warren and Wetmore because it was the office, it was both of them. It was Whitney Warren and then I believe it's Charles Wetmore were the partnership team. So I apologize about that. I wasn't getting his name wrong. I just said that. I did it, it's like Hines and Lafarge too. I always confuse Hines and Lafarge's first name. I think it's George Hines and Christopher Lafarge, but sometimes I separate it in my head.
Yeah, me too. I do that
because they're just known. It's like, McKim, and White. It's the it's the whole thing.
Warren and Wetmore, that was all nepotism because one of them was cousins with Vanderbilt and the other one was brother-in-law with Wilgus.
Yes, that's right. Right. Then that was why you get, because Reed and Stem were also brought in on that project, But Reed and Stem were more the pragmatics. You know, Warren's more put together all the flowery bows, artsy stuff, and Reed and Stem wanted to keep taking it down a couple notches.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, so Warren, yes, again, and that's probably, David said again, Warrens. It's Warren and Wetmore, and sometimes if I'm saying it quickly, it sounds like S. Sorry.
I'm coming from the bottom, or are you doing stuff from 1233?
I am going from where you cut out down. So if you want to
Okay.
go top to where you cut out, just throw me in. John Turkelly is on this tour? Hold up. John Turkelly, hello.
We were talking.
How are you? So ladies and gentlemen, John Turkelly he's the man. So he is the pen expert. John Turkelly actually there's so many stories I could tell about you, John. John said that there was Guastavino in the carriage drive entrances as well. That's right, I forgot about that. Thank you, John. John Turkelly was doing pen tours before I was doing pen tours. And he was a wonderful resource for the Eternal Space and anything pen. If I had a question, I'd always say, oh, hey, John, do you know anything about this? And of course, John always had an answer. I'm yet to stump him yet. I'm so glad you're here, John. What else?
I can go from the bottom up because it's easier for my eyes to read if you want me to do
go ahead.
it.
Go ahead.
But if you wanted to. So
go for it. I'll go from the top down then. I don't think there's much from the top.
Are there tiles in the Farley post office from Debbie Carter?
That is a good question. I have to look into that. I'm not sure if there are. I'm trying to think about the hallway. And if anybody knows, jump in. I'm thinking of the ceiling of the hallway. Chances are there must have been some somewhere because again, it's a McKim Mead and White. I cannot think, and it's a really good question. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And if they're in there, I hope to God they're being utilized in some way for Moynihan.
Beth Goffey asked, doesn't the Dakota Apartments have Guastavino vaults? And may I add to that, there are, when I was working at Ellis and just getting into Guastavino, we were told many times that there are, or just in my research, that there are plenty of places that are that we don't know yet, private homes that have Guastavino tiles in them that are, just not on any of our kind of lists.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they did big projects and small projects. Beth, I'm not sure because the Guastavinos didn't get here till '83. And their first account was the Progress Building, which is right next to the St. Urban on the Upper West. And I think, and then they did their tied for first project was the Corbin Building next to Fulton Center, where they just did the ceilings. They didn't do vaults. They just did ceiling design in there. Progress Building, I don't think they are in the Dakota. And if they are, it's not documented. I have to check. And as Mandy said, between 1883 and 1908, Guastavino Sr. worked on 1,000 buildings, not only in New York, but all across the country. So as Mandy said, his stuff is still yet to be discovered in private residences, banks, office spaces. The list, there's a great book I'm putting on the reading list called Guastavino Vaulting, The Art of Structural Tile. And it has a list of about, I believe, 500 buildings, maybe 600 buildings across the country you can find Guastavino in. And he even says it's not a complete list. 300 or so are in New York. So it's in a lot of spaces. And of course, there's a lot of later Guastavino. Guastavino had an Art Deco period, which I'd actually like to talk about sometime later. Yeah. There's a lot of good Art Deco Guastavino in the city and also in the Midwest. So
I'm going to ask the last question because I actually have a serious question.
Yes, but low library Guastavino.
Lisa Kleiss asked, does the Grotto Church at 118th Street have Guastavino ceilings?
What is it again?
Does the Grotto Church at 118th Street have Guastavino tiles?
Hold on, I will try to tell you. I actually pulled the book out and I have the list. But yes to the Low Library. That I know that was Robert Morbeck's question.
Mhm.
It's not on this list unless it has another name. But I can look that up for you.
And then Robert Morbeck, is Low Library at Columbia Dome Guastavino? I know it was McKim.
Yes, I said, yeah, so I answered that.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, you did. That's right. And then here, just to not even, I'm not even going to bother writing. So David Kerning had said, Reed and STEM won the competition and are responsible for the brilliant conceptual layout of Grand Central. Warren Vanderbilt, though architectural weren't finished, brought in cousin Whitney's firm. And so I misspoke. Reed and STEM, one of those guys is a brother-in-law of William Wilgus, the chief engineer.
Yes. Yeah.
So even though they won the competition, it was like, but so I kind of misspoke when I was saying.
It was always that there was, I mean, for Grand Central, it was that push and pull of Wilgus's sort of, conceptual utilitarian, 2 floors, 64 tracks, put the supporting towers in. And my perception was that was always him working with Reed and STEM, because, Reed and STEM were the like David said, the geniuses behind the layout. And then the Vanderbilts really wanted Warren and Wetmore to come in and do all the flourishes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and David also said, David, I wanted to violate the New York rule a lot today, but we're not allowed to because Justin has a New York rule. But the railroad station in New Jersey with Guastavino tiles is the concourse at Hoboken Terminal, which is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And I went and got pictures of it like in April when it was really, really empty.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's everywhere. It's all over the place. So yeah, I think we're kind of good on my end with questions from 12:33 on. Oh, Ralph did it. Ralph, yeah, you messaged me back. So I knew someone did message me. He said the damage from the German saboteurs to the original ceiling. Yay, trivia. I wish I had a gift for you. I'm sorry, I don't have a gift.
Oh, do a Hoboken tour. We have a guide whose name is Allison Rose, and she lives in Hoboken, although I'm not sure if she's been sheltering there. I think she went out to Oregon, but she wanted to do a virtual Hoboken. So if she comes back, I will get her to do a Hoboken tour, because I want a Hoboken tour. I've been trying to get it.
If she doesn't come back, I can do it anytime.
Oh yeah, sure.
So
we can get Mandy on the job if they do not. Beth just asked if there's tiles at the Governor's Island ferry building. There are, aren't there? Aren't there?
Yeah, there. Yes, the Battery Maritime building built in 1909. Those are Guastavino tiles that you can see on the balcony above, which now Cipriani is the first restaurant in like literally 20 years or something that was able to continue building whatever they were going to build there. So there's going to be a hotel and a restaurant up there. And a lot of people had tried to do that in the past and failed. I don't know if anybody on here remembers, when was this? Like maybe 2009 or something, but David Byrne of the Talking Heads made the upstairs where the Guastavino tiles are of the Battery Maritime building into like a big, like one big musical instrument or something, and you can like tap on columns and different types of things. And so Diana went there. Peter Taylor remembers it. Good Lord, I wish I could have seen that.
Yeah, me too.
But David Byrne hangs out on Governor's Island. I met him there when he was doing some rehearsal for his show in 2018.
All right, are we?
Thanks, Dilette. You're the best. What should I call you? Ilette the Exceptional? We got to have a good E name if I'm Mandy the Magnificent.
Oh, Debbie, thank you.
Yeah, this was amazing.
I do love these guys. Elliot.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right.
I'm glad you clarified that, Elliot, because I've always been a little bit wary of saying your name because I wasn't sure how it was pronounced. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, David, for the link. I will also, again, I will send out probably sometime this afternoon. Actually, you know what? I'll wait till the video's cut. I will send you the video with the reading list. There are 3 really great books to read if you're interested in this. Thank you, Robin, for these pictures. Robin just thanked me. I'm thanking Robin because without those pictures, this tour would have been a lot quicker and slightly more boring. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you all. So we are joining Mandy on Thursday at Governor's, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing a Hidden Gems
Little
Governor's
outside
Lab.
walking tour. Mm-hmm.
So we will see you at noon on Thursday with Mandy. And I hope you all have a very good day. If you are in the line of this storm somewhere on the East Coast, please stay safe. If you are not, stay safe anyway. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mandy, and have
Thank
a
you.
good day, guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody.